Maria Cardona, welcome back to Mea Culpa. Always great to see you, even in these troubling times. Let me start by saying the entire episode I truly want to dedicate to the Minnesota shooting of Renee Good. And I want to start by asking you this. Given the starkly conflicting narrative between federal officials and Minneapolis authorities, what does this say about the Trump administration's manipulation of facts to justify even deadly force against U.S. citizens?
Michael, first of all, want to say Happy New Year, but these circumstances really are not happy in the least. But thank you so much for having me, my friend. You are always focused on the critical issues that our country is going through. So I really appreciate the chance to discuss this, because it is important that we know what is happening. It is important that we do not let the American people look away because of exactly what you just said. We have an administration, Michael, that is literally taking us through the script of the book 1984. They are telling us, as George Orwell so, entertainingly back then did in his book, through an episode of an authoritarian dictatorship that is telling their people, their subjects, to not believe what they see and hear. And what was so amazing about what happened, the tragedy that happened in Minnesota, is if not for the videos of the brave bystanders that were standing in the many angles of what happened and filming and asking the agents, yelling at them, saying, "What the fuck are you doing?" after they saw what they did with their own eyes, we wouldn't know the truth. We would not understand that the ICE agent aimed his gun into Renee Good's car, into her driver's seat, and shot her in the face 3 times. That is not in question. We saw this by different angles, and by no means of the imagination was this woman, a now slain mother of 3 who are now orphaned children. She was not a threat. She was actually waving the patrol cars to go by her, and then one stopped, got out, tried to open up her car forcibly. She was clearly scared, turned her wheels in the opposite direction, wanting to leave. And as soon as she tried to leave, the other agent that was behind the one that was trying to open up her door forcibly shot her in the face 3 times. She was not a threat to this man. He was not in danger in any way, shape, or form. And he just murdered her. He murdered her. And then you have a medical professional, a doctor, saying, "Let me check on her. Let me check her pulse." And you hear ICE agents saying, "I don't care. No, we're not going to let you do that." So to your question, Michael, this administration is not only lying through their teeth, blatantly gaslighting the American people, trying to smear this woman by calling her a domestic terrorist, when all she was doing was bearing witness to the cruel and criminal tactics that ICE agents have been using, and now has become a victim herself, a U.S. citizen, mind you. So we now have ICE agents blessed by the Department of Homeland Security and Donald Trump himself, the president of the United States. We have ICE agents murdering U.S. citizens, Michael. We should all be scared shitless, angry, and we need to do everything to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Peacefully, of course, but we need to make sure that we stand up to this kind of horrific, unconstitutional, criminal abuse.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. How should local and state leaders hold ICE and the DHS accountable when federal agents, as you said, under the president's orders, are deployed in massive numbers and they act with near impunity?
Yeah. I think that is one of the most difficult but important questions that elected leaders face right now, because there aren't very many options that we have today, Michael. I think Tim Walz, and we know that he has been under enormous pressure because they're smearing him on all sorts of other things up in Minnesota. But I think he and the mayor of Minnesota, I think his name is Jacob Frey, handled this beautifully. They were incredibly critical. Jacob Frey said that what Secretary Noem said in her press conference was pure bullshit, because he's right. And then Tim Walz said that everyone...
Well, Jacob Frey also turned around and said he wants ICE to get the fuck out of his town.
Exactly. So I think they need to be stern like he was, but also call for people to be able to come out and protest, as is their right by the Constitution, but to do it peacefully. One of the most beautiful things I saw last night is there was a massive protest, as you saw, but it was incredibly peaceful, because what this administration wants, is for those who are opposing them to act violently so that they can have additional excuses. Now we saw what they are capable of to murder these protesters. So don't put yourself in harm's way, but absolutely have the right, feel the right, exercise the right to come out and protest peacefully. And then, Michael, let's get these fuckers out of office, right? That is where the power lies for us. And I know that's frustrating because it's not immediate, but that is how we get them out of our midst and out of our lives.
It's not just that it's not immediate. It's 298 days to be exact before the midterm elections. And that's why I constantly tell people all the time, stay attached, stay knowledgeable, stay aggressive, stay angry. You brought up a really good point, because I too, like everybody else, watched the video. Not once, not twice, at least 10 times. And that video, what I saw, which I believe everybody saw the same video, shows that Renee Good's car moving slightly. First, she backs up, right? Moves slightly, backs up in order to get around the agent, right? Because if she really wanted to be aggressive, you go straight forward, right?
Exactly.
She tried to go to the right of him, but instead, right? So she moves slightly. No contact was made with the agent, which others had said that he had to go to the hospital, that he's in stable condition, that and so on. I don't even know where they come up with these facts. But how can federal claims of self-defense be reconciled with what the visual evidence actually depicts? This is the thing that frustrates me the most. I hate it when somebody tells me, don't trust your lying eyes. Trust what I say.
That's exactly right. But I really believe that in this instance, the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, and specifically that agent are in deep shit, because there will be an investigation, I hope. But you had on the air, Michael, even Republicans and folks who have represented law enforcement officers who have been accused of shooting, civil bystanders, saying that what they saw in that video, they don't see a way out for this ICE agent. I mean, they were saying on the air that he needs to plead out, because every single thing that they saw, from the wheels turning away to the ICE agent putting his arm into the car, and clearly the visuals that we all saw and heard about how she was, to your point, backing up and wanting to get away from these agents. She did not represent a threat. And all of the training points to that this agent did not act accordingly. And so my hope is that there will be such a backlash and such a public outcry that they're not going to be able to ignore this evidence. And you had other legal analysts saying there is no way a jury will see that and not see that this ICE agent is guilty of murdering this woman in cold blood. And so again, the importance of the videos that we are seeing, and not just in Minnesota, but there have been videos all over the country, as you know, Michael, of these horrific abuses by ICE agents. And one of the things I wanted to also mention, to your point of what can people do, again, I point to, of course, the elections, but like you said, that's a long time to wait, and people get frustrated. Go and protest. Do it peacefully. And I remind folks of what has happened in several places, including Chicago. There was such an outcry. There was such a protest of people in neighborhoods with their cameras yelling, not getting physical, not getting violent, but voicing their disgust with those ICE agents, essentially telling them to get the fuck out. And it became such a pressure point for these agents that they left. They had to leave. The option was to shoot into the crowd and kill everyone, right? Which, frankly, I wouldn't put it past them at this point. But people do have power. I would say that right now.
I hate to say that, Maria. I hate to say that because, while many of us agree with that sentiment, I don't believe that all the ICE agents are looking to shoot innocent people,
I agree
American
with you.
or foreign. I really don't. This
about
specific
that,
agent, this specific agent, there's something wrong with a person. Doesn't have to be an agent, anyone who can fire a gun at another human being. I don't care where you're from. I don't care the color of your skin. I don't care your sex. I don't care your orientation. I don't care. There's got to be something wrong with somebody, unless it's in war, who's able to shoot a firearm at somebody, especially a woman sitting in her car. There's something wrong.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And I don't think every ICE agent has that malevolence in their heart. But I will say this. Here's what really concerns me about this group of ICE agents. And as you know, Michael, I was communications director when DHS, when Border Patrol, when ICE was under the Immigration Service under Bill Clinton, what was then the INS. And so I know all of the agents that do this kind of work. And the vast majority of them are good public servants who want to do the right thing. But the problem with what has happened this past year, Michael, is the marketing tools that they are using, the $50,000 bonus to recruit new agents, the really short timeline between that recruitment and putting them on the streets. I'm sorry. That is not enough for the kind of training that these ICE agents need. So my gut worry is that these agents are not prepared to do the work that they need to do to really protect the communities the way they say that they're doing. And instead, they're handing people who want guns with little training, who literally want to go out there and hunt immigrants, Michael. And as you know, I'm a Latina. I'm an immigrant. This scares the shit out of me. Because while I do not want to paint every single ICE agent with that broad brush, I am scared about the new cadre of ICE agents that are out there today.
Maria, 47 days of training.
Right.
Not because anybody did an analysis as to can somebody become a trained ICE agent in 47 days? Not because there is a protocol that has been established. Why 47 days? The reason why it's 47 days is because Donald Trump is the 47th president of the United States. And so I want people to understand just how stupid that is conceptually. If he was
Exactly.
the if he was the fifth president of the United States, you could become an ICE agent in
In
5 days.
5 days.
No, I mean,
I know.
this is stupid. There is no analysis. There was no thought. There was no program designed within which to provide somebody with the tools that are necessary when you are dealing with people. And I don't care, American or foreign, it doesn't matter. There is a certain amount that people need in terms of experience. Maybe now the same thing should hold true for lawyers like yourself or
Mhm.
myself, right? That you don't have to do 3 years of schooling, or as my father was a head and neck reconstructive surgeon, I could easily become a doctor in 47 days
There you
simply
go. Why
because
not?
there are doctors that are needed in America, right? We need doctors in America. And because he's the 47th president of the United States, he should be able to now dictate that I can now become a medical doctor or a lawyer or whatever in 47 days. That's
Yeah.
how insane we're running
That's
this country right now.
right. That's exactly right, Michael. And that's why this is so incredibly concerning, because putting the type of firearms that these ICE agents use in the hands of people who are not adequately trained, who are not adequately prepared to go into these communities to do the kind of work that they need to do, leads to exactly what happened yesterday. And when you have a department whose secretaries, who, when their first reaction is not to say, call for calm and say that they're going to gather the facts and they're going to call for a full investigation. No, when their first reaction is to call the victim and smear her and call her a domestic terrorist, I'm sorry, she should be impeached. That Secretary Nome should be impeached, because she is doing our communities and the country incredible harm with what she's doing. She answers to no one. She lies. They shoot first, clearly, and ask questions never. And the only person that they bend the knee to is Donald Trump. And that is not an agency that is worthy of a country like the United States of America.
So, you brought up about how some people think that this agent is going to be put on trial and that there's going to be a full investigation. I have a little bit of a different theory. ICE officers may actually be immune from state prosecution if they are acting as it is described by definition in the scope of their federal duty. Maria.
Yeah.
Is it time to question whether federal immunity essentially allows agents to act above the law, even to the point of killing a U.S. citizen?
No question. Absolutely. If this is how these agents are going to conduct themselves, then absolutely it's time to question that. Now, the additional question is, supposedly the FBI is going to investigate. So do we trust that? I don't think so, because
and I'm getting a contract. And I'm getting a contract tomorrow to play center for the New York Knicks. All right, let me be crystal clear. Yeah.
I mean,
no, I am. I'm actually I'm a great baseball player. Oh, I'm sorry. That's basketball.
Don't doubt it, Michael. But this is what is so scary about what is happening now. We should trust our institutions. Obviously, the FBI has a storied history, not a great one. And now we know that the person who is heading up the FBI is as much in league with Donald Trump and whose loyalty lies with Donald Trump and not the Constitution of the United States, that we should doubt whether that will be a fair investigation that will find, as we all have seen in the video, that this ICE agent was clearly wanting in his training and that the actions that he took are illegal and criminal and against the law. But I don't, to your point, I have absolutely no confidence that that is going to be the outcome of whatever investigation they start.
See, I believe that they will not even bring the investigation. Why? Well, as you brought up before, Kristi Noem, Miss Hat wearing herself, right? Hair gets done, extensions in, eyelashes put on, makeup done, hat, depending upon where she's at and the look that she's going for the day. This is all fucking cosplay, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it's the cowboy hat or then, right, the DHS hat, whatever. She went on television, went on the podium, and she labeled Good's actions as domestic terrorism, something that you referenced a few moments ago. Question I actually want to ask you: how does labeling civilians as terrorists for defending themselves or simply just trying to leave, which is what she was doing? Right. She was trying to leave the scene, shift public perception in favor of government violence.
And that is exactly where I think the American people have turned on this administration. And what's going to be really interesting about all of the issues that you just brought up, Michael, as you know, I'm a political strategist, so my overlay is the coming 2026 midterm elections. And we know from polling, Donald Trump is totally underwater on the economy, which was the one issue that, his strongest issue, and that voters counted on him to fix the economy, bring down costs, and he has betrayed them. We see his numbers on the economy are horrible. But the one other issue that he had real strength in was immigration. And he is now completely underwater on immigration as well because of what ICE agents are doing in these communities. And it's not just Latinos or immigrants or people of color who see this and say, this is not the America that my family brought us to and hoped for a better life and better future for our kids. My father speaks to me and he's in tears most days, Michael. He's like, this is not the America that I brought our family to, mija. This is not what I wanted for you all. And his heart breaks for us, for his grandchildren, our kids, and for everyone who's living this today. And so the numbers are bad. But like I was saying, it's not just us, it's independents. It's white women who do not believe that this is what this country should represent. And in fact, that's why Renee Good was out there last night, because she did not believe that what they were doing should be allowed, and what they represent is what her country represented to her and to her 3 children. She put her fucking life on the line and has now paid for it with her life to make this point very, very clear for all of us. And her death cannot be in vain. So we have to continue to underscore that this is not what voters wanted in the 24 election, that this administration with this president on down and all of his acolytes and puppets, what they are doing is not just going against the Constitution, but it is a betrayal of every single voter who voted for them in the 24 election.
Yeah. True. I've left doctor's appointments before feeling like, I got nothing useful out of it. You're fine, Michael, or drink more water, but no real data, no actionable plan, nothing that tells me to actually improve my health or how. That's exactly why I'm so excited about Superpower. They do things differently. A licensed professional can come to your home, or you can visit a nearby lab and get one simple draw with over 100 biomarkers. That's way more than your standard checkup. It gives you a real understanding of your body as you head into the new year. Through the app, you get detailed insights on your heart, your liver, your thyroid, hormones, metabolism, vitamins and minerals, and even environmental toxins. From disease prevention to fixing brain fog or even optimizing your workouts, Superpower, it gives you the most comprehensive advanced system out there. And the best part, you get an actionable health plan based on your results. Supplement suggestions, nutritional guidance, lifestyle adjustments. You no longer have to guess. You even get your true biological age, and you can track it over time. every single test builds on the last, so you see progress year after year. Their on-demand clinician team, it's also there to answer questions anytime. There's no waiting. There's no Google searches. Superpower used to, by the way, cost $499. But right now, the full experience, it's just $199. So make this year that you stop guessing about your health with Superpower. Not only did Superpower reduce their price to $199, but for a limited time, our listeners right here, you get an additional $20 off by using code Cohen. So head right now to superpower.com and use code Cohen at checkout for an additional $20 off your membership. And after you sign up, they'll ask you how you heard about them. So make sure to mention this podcast to support the show. I honestly love how Superpower helps you proactively understand and improve your health. So if you want to live longer, better, and healthier, and finally stop guessing about what your body needs, this is the most complete system I've ever seen. So again, that's superpower.com, superpower.com, and use code Cohen at checkout. Go now. You know, you bring up an incredible point because throughout America's history, at least in the last 150 plus years, we've seen the rise of civil rights. Civil rights for blacks, civil rights for women. From a civil rights perspective, I was thinking about this. What do you think the precedent does here? What do you think it sets when federal officers can kill citizens in residential neighborhoods without any accountability, no clear accountability at all?
Yeah.
Imagine if that ideology existed 100 years ago or 50 years ago. LGBTQ plus community, they just go in there and they start shooting and there's no accountability. Why? Well, because they're doing their job. This is their federal duty.
And this is why I think that Americans see this and they see themselves in danger, right? So it's not just an issue for immigrants or Latinos or communities of color. It is everyone, because if they can kill a white woman, U.S. citizen, Renee Good, mother of 3, in broad daylight, in cold blood, in front of everyone, and do it with impunity, then we're all in danger. All of us, you, me, your lovely producer, every single fucking one of us is in danger because they feel like they can act with impunity. They feel like they can go out there, and if they see someone who has brown skin and is speaking with an accent, or like what happened yesterday, a white person who is impeding them going after the person who has brown skin with an accent, they can just shoot their gun at them, kill them, and they don't have to worry about it because they know the President of the United States and the corrupt Secretary of Homeland Security on down have their back. But that's where we cannot let this stand. This is not acceptable. This is not what this country represents. This is not making communities safe. In fact, it is making us all incredibly feel and literally be more in danger. And we cannot stand for it, Michael. We cannot stand for it. This is something that we all need to be worried about every minute of every day. And if any election ever mattered, the one that is coming up does, specifically for this reason, obviously among others, but this is one of our existential right to live and breathe in our communities as free people. Because right now, I guarantee you, so many Americans do not feel like they can live and breathe like a free American citizen.
You know, it's funny you say that because my Substack that I wrote on it, I called it Screams from Minneapolis.
Oof, that's
and I just started off and I wanted to get your reaction. There are moments when the country feels like it exhales, and what comes out is grief.
Yeah.
Not the loud performative grief politicians use when cameras are rolling, but the quiet kind that sneaks up beyond the middle of the night. The kind that makes your chest tighten without warning. The kind that reminds you that something sacred has been broken again, and no one in power seems interested in fixing it. That's the feeling that hit me when I was watching the Minneapolis footage. Not anger first, not politics, sadness. Bone deep, immobilizing sadness. The kind that doesn't need words because it already knows how the story ends. It really broke my heart watching this. And every single person who watched that, I hope, felt the same sort of grief, the pain, the sadness that I felt as I heard the screams from the bystanders. As all of a sudden, that car rolled into a parked car. When I heard the sound of the doctor trying to check her pulse and being told to step aside. That bothered me a lot.
Michael, you're reading that, and this is very personal for me, as you know.
It's personal for all of us.
It is personal for all of us for exactly what you wrote, which is so heart-wrenching, and it should be personal for all of us. I have gotten so many calls from friends and family. My children have gotten calls from their friends and family, screaming, yelling, crying, saying they took my dad, they took my brother, they took my uncle. These are not criminals, Michael. These are people that are here working and contributing to our economy, and they are here legally. And they took them from the streets, and their family had no idea where they were. They were not given any information. And that is what this woman yesterday, Renee Good, was standing up against. She understood what these ICE agents were doing and the terror that they were raining on our communities, and she was standing up for that. And for that, she was murdered in cold blood. And we cannot stand for it. Sorry, I got a little emotional there.
No. It's there's no words. If I could bring some more tears to your eyes, I add into that Substack post. I lived with sadness before. I carried it through the gates of Otisville, FCI Otisville. I slept next to it, ate meals with it. It's the sadness of separation, of knowing your children are growing without you, that your spouse is hurting while you're helpless to fix it, that the world keeps moving while you're frozen in place. Prison teaches you what powerlessness really feels like. And that same hollow weight came rushing back yesterday as I listened to the screams in Minneapolis, the shrieks from bystanders, the panic, the disbelief. Those sounds, they don't fade, they embed. They follow you into silence and ambush you when you least expect it. That's what I felt like. Yeah. I was so, and I still am, so totally lost at what the hell is going on. Which brings me to the simple fact that Trump deployed 2,000 federal officers to Minneapolis. Maria, at what point does this shift from enforcement to occupation? And what constitutional questions you think that even rises to?
I think it has already shifted to that, Michael. This is not law enforcement. They use every single excuse for their lawlessness under the guise of law enforcement. You know, we're not even talking about the invasion of Venezuela, but they use that there too. But law enforcement for them is the excuse, the be all and end all that gives them carte blanche to go in and abuse and trample on everyone's constitutional rights. And they want us to be afraid. They want us to be scared. They want us to not say anything. They want us to shut the hell up. And so we need to do exactly the opposite. And these occupations, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, they actually do respond when there is such a public outcry, like what happened in Chicago, that the courts kind of see that and they're like, no, that's not law enforcement. That's an abuse of your power. And that's why the court said, no, you can't send National Guard into Chicago anymore. And so piecemeal by piecemeal, it happens way too slow, but the courts are doing what the courts need to do. Now, the question is, there have been way too many times when this corrupt administration thumbs their nose at the courts and are in contempt. So that's one thing, right? What do we do in response to that? But it all leads to getting these assholes out of power, because that's ultimately the only way that we're going to save our country and our communities from these kinds of horrific abuses that we have now tragically seen, can include the murder of American citizens on our streets.
So, Maria, with Trump and Kristi Noem and J.D. Vance and others all using social media to defend the shooting, how does the administration weaponize misinformation to normalize violence against civilians?
By using altered images, and we know that they have done that. This is why AI terrifies me. We can't let it be used that way. By using the misinformation and the ridiculous press conferences that they are doing, like the one Noem did yesterday, in all of her glorious cosplay. But then that only demands that we try to stay a step ahead and continue to call them out. This is why what you're doing is so important, why what I'm doing is important, why every single person who is out there using their voice to understand how important it is that they continue to do that, to talk the truth, to clarify the facts, to send out the videos, right? The videos are incredibly powerful, to urge people out there to continue to use videos to record these jerks when they're out in our communities, because that's the only thing that's going to keep them accountable in any way, shape, or form. That's the power that we have. And there's more of us than them. Let's remember that, as helpless as we might feel at times. And we just need to continue to use our voices and not let them scare us into silence, which is what they want, which is how they want to use their social media.
They're not just scaring us into silence. Yeah, but they're not just scaring us into silence. They're shooting us into silence.
I know. That's right.
Which brings me to the point.
They're murdering us into silence.
Which brings me to the point.
Yeah.
It brings me to the point that you were talking about before, about the FBI now allegedly opening up an investigation. Hey, here's the problem with that. Federal officers are technically, in this case, being asked to investigate themselves in part, right? So therefore, how reliable are these probes when the agency responsible for the killing is also overseeing the inquiry?
It is not reliable, especially in this administration. In administrations past, and like I mentioned before, I used to work at INS, which was part of the Department of Justice. And in years past, under both Democratic and Republican administrations, the Department of Justice was an independent entity. They did their work without the pressure and political push from the White House, again, whether Republican or Democrat. Under this administration, we have now seen that Donald Trump uses his Department of Justice as his own private law enforcement agency. He uses the Department of Homeland Security as his own private law enforcement agency. And that's why Americans cannot trust what's going on with investigations, with the sort of, overseeing whatever happens with these incidences. But let's see. I am curious to see how how all of this is going to play out, because the public outcry here is reaching a crescendo that I haven't seen, frankly, since George Floyd. And ironically, this took place less than a mile from the murder of George Floyd in Minnesota. That poor state has seen its horrific share of violence in this past year. And so,
Maria, you turn around and you say, that, the country has this massive outcry for Renee Good, and I totally agree. And there was a massive outcry for George Floyd. You know what else there was a massive outcry for? The Epstein files.
Yeah.
How's that working out for us?
Yeah. Well,
do you really think the FBI is going to investigate themselves?
No, I don't. But I do think that they are on their heels on the Epstein files, which is why they're doing all this other crap, right? Venezuela, Greenland, whatever else they're threatening to do and, invade. They're on their heels on the Epstein files. It is taking way too long, and we know they're dragging their feet, but that is also one of the reasons why they are on their heels politically. And that's why you're seeing Republicans, there are fissures now in the MAGA coalition, as you know, and I think you've talked about that before. And that's what this is causing. And I think that the more that Republicans see their political futures in question and threatened in the upcoming midterm elections, the more fissures I think you're going to see in the in that coalition, in the MAGA base, because it's going to be interesting to see how much more these Republicans are going to want to bend over backwards for the benefit of Donald Trump and put their own careers on the line, or are they going to understand that they actually were elected by their voters and that's who they work for and not Donald Trump? So we're going to see. And if they decide to continue to bend the knee and genuflect at the altar of Donald Trump, they're going to be thrown out of office.
Amen to that one. So we brought this up before. This is not the first death in this immigration crackdown nonsense. Right. In fact, it's the fifth death. The fifth. What does it suggest about the administration's willingness to use lethal force as a deterrent? Because it's not just the deaths. We watched as in Chicago, ICE agent opened fire and hit in the head a priest who was standing up there and basically conducting a sermon on what Jesus would be doing right now and how the ICE agent is actually antithetical to the teachings of Christ.
Yeah.
And so for that wonderful sermon that he was giving while standing there, that seems to have pissed off the, I believe, Christian ICE agent, he decided to shoot him in the top of his head with a rubber pellet bullet.
I saw that. That is just difficult to see as well, heart-wrenching to see. That tells me, Michael, that there is nothing these ICE agents won't do in the service of who they believe they're working for, which is one Donald Trump. And I also believe, again, I don't want to paint all ICE agents with this broad brushstroke, but I will divide the new recruits from the agents that are actually there to do good public service. And I believe these new recruits have a malevolent, racist, xenophobic streak in them, that they are happy to be handed automatic weapons to go out there and hunt people that have accents that, whose skin is brown, who they believe come from shithole countries. Because I think in their minds, they're cleaning up the country. That's where I think this is also twisted. And that's why the training, the 47 days doesn't do shit, right?
I spent a lot of my life running at full throttle. Law, politics, this media. And somewhere along the line, my body started reminding me it has limits. Waking up stiff, feeling sluggish, struggling to recover after a workout. I thought, is this just middle age finally sneaking up on me? Introducing Qualia Senolytic. It's the first of its kind formula designed to help your body naturally eliminate senescent cells. Now, here's the thing. These zombie cells, they aren't just a funny name. They linger long after they've done their job, draining your energy, slowing recovery, and making you feel older than you actually are. Qualia Senolytic is a groundbreaking, clinically tested supplement with 9 vegan, plant-derived compounds that help your body naturally clear out those zombie cells. You take it just 2 days a month, and it supports better cellular health, so you can feel more energized, recover faster, and tackle your days, well, like you used to. For me, it's been a total game changer. I feel sharper, more energetic, less sore after workouts, and honestly, I do feel years younger. It's like I got a little of my old self back, ready to take on life without the drag. So experience the science of feeling younger. Go to qualialife.com/Cohen for up to 50% off your purchase and use code Cohen for an additional 15%. That's Qualia Life, QualiaLife.com/Cohen. Your older self will thank you, and thanks to Qualia for sponsoring this episode.
I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that we are making as a country as a whole, right? Because these agents, many of them are crooked in that way, and are not there for the public good. They are there to fulfill an internal desire that they have to make this country what they think it is in their heads. Many of them, I will dare to say, are white nationalists and are acting as such. We've seen videos of them stopping Uber drivers, delivery folks, young people, simply because they are speaking a different language, or they are listening to salsa music, or they have accents, and they have the temerity to just say, prove to me that you're here legally. Are you an American citizen? That is not the United States of America that my father brought us to. And that is not the United States of America that I want my children growing up in. And so it is our obligation to understand that those actions are not what this country should be. It is what it is right now, sadly, but it is within our power with our voices, with our demonstrations, and again, sadly, not without danger now, but specifically with our votes, to make sure that we elect people who are deserving of the values that this country, that we know we want this country to represent, and it's not this crap.
It's funny you bring up the word children. It's something that sits on my shoulders very, very heavily. We've watched now, as we've normalized shootings in schools, children, unlike when we were kids, you have a fire drill, a time to get away from class, math, history, English, whatever it might be, especially if it was during a quiz, right? And then you end up at the gym, by the way, which is stupid, the only place that actually has a wooden floor. Everything else, of course, is concrete, cinder block, and metal, but that's all right, because that makes perfect fucking sense, right? So, or you went outside into the play area, area and so on with your friends, everybody, of course, in height, like a bunch of dwarfs, right? Going all the way and so on. But now it's all about shooting drills, locking the door. That's somebody's job. Turning over the desk so you have a place to hide. Going into, say, the closets and things like that. We have normalized this shit, and we have now put an additional stress upon our children that is immeasurable. Now turn around and take all of that and couple it with, right after this shooting, public schools were closed. Students came out and they protested. They protested in fear. They joined their parents in the protests. The problem that I see, Maria, is how does this militarized federal enforcement affect communities, and most importantly, affect our children who are just simply trying to live their lives? It's hard enough to be a kid. Now you're worried about ICE coming in. You're worried about shooters coming in. You're worried about things that a child is not supposed to ever be considering. None of this.
Yeah, that is such a great point, Michael. And I am part of this group called DC Political Activist Moms that was formed when ICE started going into communities and going to schools, Michael, and grabbing parents as they dropped off their children. And so what has formed at the community level are groups of parents who are, American born, white, who have now offered, and this is happening everywhere, to take their neighbors' children to school so that they don't have to be in harm's way, and so that their children don't have abducted parents. And this is where, we talk about how this has not become just an issue of concern for immigrants or communities of color, but white parents are pissed off that their kids, their white children, are stressed out because their friends' parents, and they're seeing this, are being abducted off the streets, and their friends are screaming at the top of their lungs. How do you think they're going to react, right? They're traumatized as well. Mm-hmm. So this is something that we are seeing is causing collective trauma amongst our children who are in kindergarten, from kindergarten on up, right? And that's not something that children get over easily. Children are having nightmares. They're going to have longstanding issues that we're going to see play out later on. And so this administration is, instead of doing things and passing policies that are helping Americans live better, more fulfilled, happier lives, they're doing exactly the opposite. They are passing policies, enforcing, their own rules and regulations that are causing trauma amongst American families. And that in and of itself should be something where voters are like, this is nuts. This is not what we voted for. We deserve much better. Let's vote these assholes out of office.
Amen to that. But I see it also another societal implication here that cannot be underscored. As a child, and I had some kids in my class when I was very young, like 5th and 6th grade, whose parent, the father, was a police officer. We were always taught to respect the police. In fact, even as I walk down the street here in the city and I see police officers, I'll always say, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for what you do. And they appreciate it. Mm-hmm. I was taught to be respectful to law enforcement. But right now, with everything that's going on here, and I really do believe this, the fact that everyday citizens now fear interactions with law enforcement, especially when you're talking in residential neighborhoods, I think it signals a much deeper crisis of democracy and
Yeah.
public safety than we're even talking about.
That's exactly right, Michael, because as you know, that has always been sort of one of the rubs on when you talk about the issue of immigration and immigration enforcement, right? Whereas the right wingers always say that police officers should be helping ICE agents do their job. If they were really concerned about public safety, the opposite is true of that, because
Right.
you want police officers to be trusted by the communities which they serve. And if these communities know that these police officers are in cahoots with ICE agents, they're not going to call them. An immigrant wife is not going to call the police if she starts getting abused by her husband. That's going to be the last thing she does. And so it has caused more fear. It has caused more violence. It has caused more hurt in these communities than what I think they want to say that they are doing, which is keeping our community safer. And that's just absolutely not true, because these police officers, when they are made to work with ICE and work with DHS, then they are seen as betraying the communities that they serve. And they don't want to be seen as that themselves. They don't want that. You talk to police officers and they say two things. We're not trained to be immigration agents. We don't want to do that work. And secondly, we don't want to be seen as community officers that our people can't that our people cannot trust. And so to them, that makes their jobs that much harder, and they don't want that either.
Yeah. So look, Maria, the hour unfortunately goes by way too fast because I have a billion more questions for you here. But I want to ask you this because this actually was a question posed to me by my children. Mm-hmm. With the political, the legal, and the societal fallout that we just spoke about, mm-hmm. in your opinion, who bears ultimate moral responsibility here? Is it the individual officer that fired the 3 shots? Is it DHS leadership? Or is it Trump himself? And a second part to the question, mm-hmm. why is this question critical for the American conscience right now?
Yeah. 2 great questions. You have smart kids, Michael. So the first question, I think ultimately it is Donald Trump who bears responsibility, because everything flows from him. The mandates for deportations, the mandates for ICE to act with impunity in these communities, to be as violent as they want to be, that comes from Donald Trump. That's not to say to take away personal responsibility from these ICE agents themselves. They're adults. They know what they're doing. They also know what's in their heart, which is why I think it's important to separate, right, this new cadre of ICE agents who I believe do not represent what historically agents in the immigration force have represented. There are always bad apples everywhere, but I don't want to paint with a broad brush, because I've worked with them, agents in the immigration service who actually were there to do a public good. I don't think the majority of the ICE agents that have come on board in the last year want to do a public good. I think they're there to fulfill their own desires to clean up this country and make it look like whatever they think it should look like. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, they're there for $50,000 and a gun.
Correct, exactly. And that also comes from Donald Trump, right? We've seen how he talks about immigrants. We've seen how he trashes people that come from other countries. We know he's a xenophobic asshole and racist to the core. And that is how he is running the country. And the fallout is tragic, as we saw yesterday. And so what I am hoping happens is that Americans see this and understand that we are at a crossroads, that this is an incredibly important moment in time where we all bear responsibility for what comes next. And what comes next is up to each and every one of us as to how we react to the injustices and the outrage that we are seeing in terms of the conduct from agents that are supposed to be there to protect us and instead are murdering U.S. citizens on the street.
Yeah. You know, I finished off my Substack by saying the screams from Minneapolis weren't just the sound of a woman dying. They were the sound of a country realizing too late that cruelty has become policy and truth has become optional. And the sadness that followed, that's the sound of America grieving itself.
Yeah. Amen, brother.
Maria,
that is tragically true.
Yeah. It's a tough one. Maria, thank you. Appreciate you. Thanks for making us all smarter.
Thank you.
We have
so
a lot
much,
more
my
work to
friend.
do.
Thank you. I really appreciate you. And, you know, as always, let me know when you want me to come on. These conversations, this one was particularly tough, but so incredibly necessary. So, gracias, amigo.
De nada. Thank you so much, Maria.
Thanks.